Hello, everyone. Welcome to our crash course on arguing.
Today, we'll be discussing how to persuade on your own terms and how to control the argument. Let's get started.
In Chapter 12, Heinrich stresses the importance of defining an argument's terms and issues. He then explains the difference between two argumentational strategies, practices politicians call labeling and framing. Heinrich defines labeling as using favorable connotations to people and concepts, while framing is when you define a whole issue, placing that issue within your own bounds. He then gives specific techniques for labeling and framing. These techniques make it easier to gain leverage in an argument and direct the argument to be more beneficial for your own terms. Let's take a look at these techniques. Heinrich's techniques for labeling include term changing. Don't accept the terms your opponent uses. Instead, insert your own. Redefinition. Accept but change the connotation of your opponent's terms. Definition jujitsu. Use your opponent's terms to attack if they work in your favor. For example, if your sibling says, "You're just talking like an egghead," and you reply, "If talking like an egghead means knowing what you're talking about, then yes, I am talking like an egghead." This shows that how you use your opponent's words for your own benefit. Definition judo. Use terms that contrast your opponents, creating context that makes them look bad. For example, Antony's speech in Julius Caesar. Antony calls Brutus an honorable man so many times it starts to sound like an accusation. Now let's talk about Heinrich's framing techniques. The first one is use of commonplace words. Choose terms that favor you while putting your opponent in a bad light. The second one is defining the issue in the broadest context. Use a context that appeals to the values of the widest audience. The third and last one is dealing with the specific problem in a future tense. When you use definition tools, you are using the strategy of stance, the position you take at the beginning of an argument. Stance ultimately comes down to facts, definition, quality, and relevance. Use these in descending order if the facts don't work for you. Facts work best, but always fall back on others until one works for you.
Logos can be an exceptional tool because it can help skip facts when necessary and instead focus on the rational strategy, definition, and subtle manipulation when in an argument. In J. Heinrich's book, Thank You for Arguing, he dedicates his 13th chapter to discussing logos. Let's first talk about deduction and induction. Deductive versus inductive. Deductive logic is using a commonplace to reach a conclusion, or going from general to specific. Inductive logic uses the circumstances to form a belief, or it goes from specific to general. For example, Sherlock Holmes made deduction very common by applying common sense principles. He takes the general clues that he finds and applies them to a specific conclusion. On the other hand, an example of inductive logic would be when a movie advertises that it has 4.5-star rating. This means that if most people like the movie, then you will too. Heinrich also elaborates on enthymeme. As Heinrich puts it, enthymeme is a logical sandwich that contains deductive logic. It takes a commonplace and uses it as a first step in convincing the audience. In simpler terms, you would say, "We should do blank because of blank," and you would fill the blanks with a choice and a commonplace. For example, if you and a friend were arguing on a place to eat and you know that you've gone to an Italian restaurant often recently, you would say, "We should eat Chinese food because we've had a lot of Italian food lately." Fact, comparison, and story are also important in making your argument stronger. Here's an example. Say you wanted to convince your friend to go to a concert with you instead of staying home. Fact, comparison, and story. The fact you would use is, you said you wanted to get out of the house more often. The comparison that you would use is, would you get the adrenaline rush and fun from being at a concert if you stay home alone? And the story that you would use is, one of my friends who moved told me that they decided not to go to the last concert this band held in town, and now they regret it. Deduction, induction, enthymeme, and fact, comparison, and story are important to strengthening your argument. J. Heinrich has taught us a lot of how to effectively argue.
Thanks to him, we now know how to persuade on our own terms and control the argument effectively. Thanks for watching.